Hello, my people. Today is an important topic for me and, well, without getting too high on myself, for the world. Um, Today, we will be discussing harm reduction and addiction. Drugs! Did you know people use drugs? Oh, gosh, the scoundrels. Before we begin, please check out my disclaimer video I made earlier on, about a couple months ago. While I do have experience in this field, this video is not a replacement for therapy. And if you or someone you love is in danger, please reach out to the appropriate professionals for help. Okay. So what gives me the audacity to think that I have any authority to talk about this? Well, I have my doctorate in clinical psychology. I did my dissertation on substance use treatment, a meta-analysis looking at the effectiveness of various treatments for substance use disorders. I treated substance use and abuse disorders in inpatient, outpatient, and private practice facilities, in group settings and individually, for 3 years. This included working a year under one of the leaders in the field, Dr. Andrew Tatarsky, who wrote the textbook on harm reduction psychotherapy, literally. Before working for him, I attended many of his conferences and trainings and was in a monthly consultation group with him and other clinicians for over 3 years. Before that, I actually thought I had invented the moderation approach about a decade ago. And for that story, well, I was 17 years old. I just had a really rough night drinking and clubbing. My parents forced me to see a psychologist. Within 15 minutes of the meeting, he had already diagnosed me as an alcoholic, and the only cure was to go 90 days sober. I have yet to see evidence supporting the abstinence mandate as the only route of treatment. I pushed back. Hell, even offered to meet him in the middle at 30 days of alcohol abstinence with some moderate cannabis use. He not only refused, but threatened to report my use to my parents, who were paying for the whole treatment. I walked out and did not return. So I was just another stubborn drug user in denial, right? Well, I'd ask you to hold your judgments, please. I know the stigma is deep. If you can, expand your horizons and think about how the scene might have felt like for me. Here's a man called a doctor. My parents are saying he's here to help me, but I feel restricted, labeled, ignored. And heck, these are all the reasons I was using in the first place. To find a feeling of freedom in a world full of expectations and responsibilities that I didn't ask for. So while harm reduction is a relatively novel approach to substance use and abuse, its foundational concepts are not new. And there is mounting peer-reviewed evidence and journals to support it. But there still remains a serious gap in the research. See, any evidence looking at recovery will focus on, of course, survivors. That misses those that can't respond. To borrow a line from the Bible, those whose blood screams from the ground. See, they can't be interviewed on how their quality of life is because they don't have a life. Literally. It's time to rethink substance abuse treatment. It's time we rethink the word enabling. Enabling. It's so important to understand. Enabling is defined as allowing behavior to continue through supportive participation or neglect. Or that's one of the definitions. This idea that if we're not hard on them, then we're enabling their use. Well, it's a bit more complex than that, and certainly I'm not for enabling problematic use. But I would deeply question how we understand that word. Labeling things like compassion, curiosity, and creative solutions as enabling is enabling. Stick with me. Criminalizing use, punishing users, just say no policies. This is the kind of stuff that enables people to stay silent, to use in secret and shame in bathrooms and other discreet areas, perhaps the only places they feel safe. Enabling is when opening up about your drug usage can subject you to harsh judgment and criticism, control, and loss of freedoms, and of course the legal consequences. That enables silence, secrecy, use and shame. That is enabling. Okay, I'm ranting a bit. Where was I? Treatment, right. So according to the World Health Organization, only 1 in 7 people with drug use disorders receive treatment each year, leaving 86% untreated globally. Some of the barriers to treatment include stigma, a lack of services, cost, criminalization, and low health system prioritization. So among people who didn't seek treatment, they interviewed some of them, and 39% said that they did not feel ready to stop. So that was kind of where I was at 17 years old. Substance abuse is one of the only mental health fields where we get to force people to get better before treatment starts. See, I see forced abstinence as potentially forcing people's walkers away before they even begin to learn to crawl. So in the US alone, there are an estimated 46 million people struggling with substances and substance use each year, and only about 5 million of them are receiving some sort of treatment. And these are just the estimates. Between 2021 and 2023, there was over 100,000 overdose deaths each year. This is tragic, and the most tragic part is that these deaths are mostly preventable. Around 80% of those deaths are opioid related. And we have an opioid overdose reverser. It exists. I'm going to get it. Hold on. Oh, man. That's how long it took me to get my opioid reverser. I have it. Here it is. Narcan or naloxone. 1 spray in the nose can reverse an opioid overdose. Right. It's that simple. The stuff is incredible. And it's not the only harm reduction tool available, but damn, it's for sale over the counter in every state in the US as of March of 2023. And I bought it at a CVS. It was moderately expensive at $44, but can be acquired through prescriptions. And there are other ways for those who can't afford it. And accessibility is still a major issue. They should be mandating each household to have this on site. Every person should have this in their bag. It's practically foolproof. It can't hurt you. It's a nasal spray, a simple application. The instructions are on the box. There are risks associated with the potential negative emotional reactions of those brought back from the overdose, as in they might be really mad because it immediately stops the dosage and brings them back to their realities that can be painful, and they may have been trying to escape. So yeah, there's that. But God, seeing a man frustrated is a lot better than seeing a man dead, at least in my humble opinion. Okay, so the topic of the day, addiction is treatable. Nobody has to die. I'm writing a book, or more of a pamphlet. I want it to be simple and straight to the point, around 30 pages long, 4 stages, not 12 steps. And look, it's not going to be anti-AA. Hell, AA can be incorporated into it, but it can also be thought of as an alternative path. Evidence-based, experience-based, compassionate, pragmatic solutions. Grounded in the biopsychosocial model of understanding addiction and mental health in general, and founded on the principles of harm reduction. Whew. Okay, I need a breath. Before we begin, just a quick synopsis. What is the biopsychosocial model? So a quick history, drug use was thought of as a moral failing, and so we criminalized it and shamed users. One can argue this is biblical, as Adam and Eve were shamed and punished for consuming prohibited, mind-altering substances. Okay, so at some point, we move past that and we're like, whoa, 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 hold on, hold on. Drug use is like a disease, man, a brain disease. See, it impacts the brain. These people need help. Let's help them and be nice. Like you wouldn't judge someone for needing insulin, right? Just like that, right? Well, so while the medical disease model of addiction is certainly a big step up from the moral and shame-based model, it is still based in the idea that we, as clinicians, know better than the users themselves about themselves. It is based in control, and it has been used to force people into treatments they don't want and mandate treatment goals that they may not resonate with. In no other form of mental health treatment are goals mandated. Beyond perhaps people sentenced to treatment, like in psychiatric facilities, but more on them in another episode, and they're an important population. So biopsychosocial model looks to move beyond the disease model, understanding that yes, there are biological predispositions to substance use and ways the substances themselves influence our biology and brain mechanisms. But these only explain part of the story. The psychosocial part is almost completely ignored in the disease model. For the psycho, we can begin to think about Kantian's self-medication hypothesis. And it's really simple and kind of obvious. People use to feel better. What? And to borrow a line from Gabor Mate, instead of asking why the use, let's ask why the pain. As in, we can start to get curious about what it is that hurts so much, where it's coming from, particularly the traumas they may have experienced. In 2018, I sat at my first addiction conference. I was a master's student, but relatively new to the field, coming from a business school background and conservative upbringing where mental health was usually kept hush-hush. We don't talk about burnout. And so Gabor asked the audience, who here had a substance abuse issue and thinks they didn't have trauma? And, silly me, I raised my hand. I'm like, oh, pick me. I didn't have trauma. So he comes over to me and asks me about my life in front of 500 other people and many clinicians. And, I was new and naive, and I was like, trauma? Me? Nobody died, within my family, my close family. I didn't get in any major car accidents yet. I didn't fight in a war. My parents didn't get divorced. I didn't fight much with my siblings. We had food and shelter and more. I did well in school, relatively, and he asked me if I ever had any surgeries. And as I began to ask about my life-changing heart valve replacement, he stopped me, saying that was going to be too easy. Okay, so maybe surgery counts as trauma. But then he kept going, and he just stops for a second, and it's like he sniffed something. Maybe in the way I was responding, who knows what he saw, but he saw it. And he looks at me and he says, your dad ever yell at you? And I'm like, huh? And then he screamed, your dad ever yell at you? And I crawled into a ball in front of 500 people, and they all applauded. Years later, Dr. Tatarsky was telling over that story, and I'm like, oh yeah, that was me. He told me that they were upset with Gabor and didn't find what he did with me ethical, and we can debate about that. But it was certainly insightful, and a really insightful moment for me. So yes, I'll dedicate an entire episode to my journey to becoming Dr. Franco, to start the next phase of episodes, but in sum, trauma is complex. And it's not just the big capital T traumas. It's our relationships, particularly the ideas we learn in childhood, of self-worth, of value, and expectations in love. This is really complex, but I invite those who are curious to look into the concept of identified patient and family systems theory. You can Google it, look into YouTube, or I'm going to leave some links in the description. Feel free, there should be one popping up on screen as well. So right, biopsychosocial. And social, of course. Social stigma and shame play a huge role here. And maybe the reasons effective and welcoming treatments aren't more readily available. While addiction doesn't discriminate and can get the rich and poor alike, there are disparities. In the US, Black and Hispanic individuals are more likely to face legal consequences, lack access to treatment, and receive poor quality care. So, is it nature? Is it nurture? Both. That's a silly question. And we need to treat both. It's bio, it's psycho, it's social, and it's happening all at once. And they each play into each other. Whoosh. Okay, so as complex as that is, the treatment is actually really simple. I'm going to talk now about a 4-stage model that I've developed. It's heavily based upon and in the principles of harm reduction theory and Dr. Andrew Tatarsky's harm reduction psychotherapy model, as well as Edward Kansian's self-medication hypothesis. These stages are not steps. They can flux, and they are all vital to the treatment process. And these stages can help with any addiction, from opioids to nicotine. I would argue these stages would help with addiction to problematic people, places, and things as well, and different kind of behaviors, but more on problematic relationships next week. One more tidbit before I begin, particularly regarding the title. Addiction is treatable. In my cohort of 22 doctorate students, three out of 22 raised their hand when asked if they wanted to treat substances and substance use. We weren't offered even an intro to substance use course until most of us had already completed all our requirements. And when working in a psychiatric facility on a ward that treated people who used the insanity plea, I asked the treatment providers their thoughts on treating addiction. Again, we had people on our unit who had murdered people, that had raped people, and committed violent crimes. And these doctors, nurses, and therapists were almost unanimous in saying that they wouldn't work with people with addiction, that they were more inclined to work with the people we were working with. Addiction is thought of as a black hole, no hope, a revolving door at best. And I deeply disagree. I just think the treatment we offer sucks. Of course, there are deeper social issues going on. It's complex. But having more effective and accessible treatment options can go such a long way. Whew. So without further ado, an alternative model based in compassionate pragmatism and harm reduction principles. Addiction is treatable. Nobody has to die. Okay, stage 1, safety. I can't treat dead people. End of sentence. And so the first primary goal is to make sure that the person doesn't die. Of course, if they want to die, that's a separate conversation, and you can look at my video on suicide and assisted suicide. But yeah, if they don't want to die, it's tragic if they do. These are sometimes called accidental deaths. I would call them preventable. In the past year, overdose deaths in the US decreased by 27%, from over 100,000 to 80,000. These numbers are complex to understand and can't be attributed to one thing, but certainly the prevalence and increase in availability of Narcan could have had a large impact on these numbers. Narcan is a massive player in this game. And if one thing you learned in this entire podcast, buy Narcan, have Narcan available. We need more Narcan. The president's recent budget cuts may impact Narcan availability. And the legal systems play a huge role here. And it's vital that this life-saving drug stays available. The safety stage can and should go beyond Narcan. And this can include access to mental health care for those that desire it, drug testing kits, that is to see that the drug is what you think it is and isn't containing any foreign substances, providing clean needles, and the prevention of the spread of harmful diseases. Sober buddies, as in someone who is not on the substance who can be present while the other person uses. Hotlines can fill this gap as well if someone doesn't have a friend that can. And safe use sites. Many can see portions of this stage as enabling, and without having available treatment options, it can be potentially, but the research has supported everything I'm suggesting right now, and the links are below in the description if you'd like to see for yourself, and that includes safe use sites. Beyond opioids, safety can also look like creating better transportation systems to get people home from bars, and other measures to prevent drunk driving and the dangerous mix of substances and heavy machinery. In this safety stage also lies an important role, which is establishing safe confidants. People that substance users can feel safe sharing about their use with. This is an active process and can grow through the healing journeys of the individuals, but even at the start, it can be vital to create safe spaces without judgment, shame, reporting, and of course, it's complex, particularly when children and minors are involved. But even for those over the age of 18 who don't have children, there's still so much barriers to treatment. There's still so much stigma, fear, and shame. And to create a welcoming atmosphere for those seeking help or just curious about getting to know their use patterns better is a vital step towards preventing overdose deaths. So this safety stage certainly does not have to be exclusive to not dying, and is worth revisiting throughout the process, how we can be safer in whatever we are doing and create safety for people who use substances and those around them. Whew. Okay, stage 2. Get curious. In this stage, we invite the individual to begin to wonder, what is it that my substance use is doing for me? This stage is based in self-medication theory and some techniques from cognitive behavioral therapy. One of the simplest ways to start this stage is figuring out when you use and what is going on before and after. That is, discovering your triggers and how it feels post-use. Charts can be super helpful in this stage. Simple charts, like just make an Excel sheet, or heck, just a piece of paper. Date, time, usage, perhaps trigger. You don't even have to be trying to stop, just trying to get to know yourself and your usage patterns more. I like to think of it as like tracking an animal in the wild. You're looking at its footprints, even its scat. You want to know everything about it, everything you can. And you really want to get to know it, what it likes, what it hates, what it loves. And invite it to sit down, serve the tiger tea, as they say. Is the use at night, during the day, after talking to your mother-in-law, after a rough email from your boss? Get curious, find out. At least start a preliminary investigation. One client called this stage the most boring drug experiment he ever did. It's not very frilly, but it can be really effective. One of my favorite tools in this stage is the urge surfing tool. And there's tons of stuff online about this as well. It sees the urge to use not as a problem, but as a potential area of insight. You ask your urge, that is the urge to use, what brings you here? What are you looking for? And maybe it'll say, shut up, give me my drugs. And okay. But like, just a second, if you can, what are you hoping that they'll bring you? Without judgment, without shame, just curiosity and compassion. Stage 3, short-term replacements. So this could easily have been stage 2, and can and should go hand in hand. All stages can be happening at the same time, certainly stage 1. Heck, this can be even part of stage 1. It's nothing straightforward. None of the stages are straightforward. Neither are human beings. We continue on. So in this stage, we can really lean into the harm reduction idea. That is that we can reduce, if we can reduce harm, then that is a win. Look, motorcycling is dangerous. So let's wear a helmet, folks. Would we rather you not motorcycle? Well, people love it. Who am I to judge? No matter how loud and annoying that revving engine can be for me, So short-term replacements, I like to call it the Moneyball approach, based in the movie and book. Can't afford your favorite drug anymore? Too expensive? Literally killing you? Creating problems in your relationships? Okay, we might not be able to find a one-to-one replacement, but we can find a bunch of things to fill the gaps in the meantime. The key is to understand what the substance was doing for you and what might be able to do similar things without killing you. So like a cigarette brings anxiety relief. Perhaps, but there's more. It's social. It's an excuse for a break. People might just feel like the feeling of smoking something. Heck, it curbs appetite. So to replace all those factors with one thing may not be possible, but by taking a multifaceted approach, you can build and experiment with various potential replacements. So this can look like medication-assisted treatments. For opioids, that's your bupes and your methadones, and there's tons of evidence to support those. Again, links below. This can also look like replacing one substance with a less harmful one. That is, let's say, a switch from opioids to cannabis. Are we solving the root issue? Maybe, maybe not. More importantly, cannabis can certainly be safer than opioids. Heck, even moderate use fits into this category. 3 shots of whiskey a night can be safer than 6. 1 cigarette is safer than 12, and so on. I do warn of a whack-a-mole in this stage, particularly for those choosing to abstain from their substance of choice. When one use goes down, it's almost expected something else will pop up. And if not, or you'll be forced to face whatever emotions and trauma that are hiding underneath the usage. For that, see stage 2 and stage 4 to come. So stage 3, I want people to get really creative. Using at night, schedule events to fill your evenings. Using on the train, schedule a phone call with a friend or therapist. Using in the day, find employment, education, or something else to fill the empty space. That might not be possible for some people, and some are very isolated and don't have supportive friends. So here we can start to understand why people use. It can become their best friend, their trusted confidant. It asks for very little in return, beyond, of course, the whole, your literal life. But that can be a cost many are willing to pay, particularly survivors of physical and emotional abuse, who have learned that love is, for whatever reason, comes with pain, and the two are not separated. So this can be where self-help groups can be helpful and supportive, but certainly shouldn't be required. Again, they can be helpful. Other solutions can include, and are not limited to, and of course all of these can be abused. Developing hobbies like video game playing, movies, sports, cooking and eating delicious foods, and reading, and more. Think exercise, running, yoga. How about your self-improvements, mindfulness, meditations? There's tons of apps out there and resources available for low to no cost. Even cold dipping, if that's your thing. And if you can afford it, sauna steam, acupuncture, massage. A key insight for this stage, these don't have to be long-term solutions. But if they do work for you, they can be, especially if they are not causing harm to yourself or to others. See, addiction is complex to define. Breathing is only not called an addiction because it doesn't harm us. We are compelled to do it all the time. You try stopping. I mean, don't actually do that, but you get the point. It's not about non-reliance, particularly, but finding things that work for you. The only prerequisite is that they are alternatives to what you're doing now, and you would like to maybe no longer do. And they might not all work. That's the curious and experimenting part of this stage, finding out what does. Whew. Okay, without further ado, stage 4, the big questions, long-term care. If stage 3 was trying to find the answer to, I use because I'm bored, how do I not feel bored? Stage 4 begins to ask, I use because I feel empty. How do I not feel empty? This stage is hard. It asks people to ask the tough questions. There's some challenging and even life-threatening trial and error on my own part. I found out that I don't feel empty when I'm connecting to people, in nature, helping people, or connecting through spiritual practice. So those became some sort of short-term and long-term solutions for me. And some of those still carry me to this day. Now in my whack-a-mole game, I became heavily reliant on the spiritual practices as a form of coping and what I now understand as spiritual bypassing. And it can be really problematic. Spirituality isn't necessarily deadly, though can be with some radicals, but even beyond the radicals, it can prevent people from really feeling what's underneath. The pain, the sorrow, the loss, the trauma. So do be aware of that possibility. In this stage, we can also begin to explore our maladaptive relational patterns and ask the tough questions, like what attracts me to something that is so harmful for my body and being? Where have I learned that in order to feel good, pain has to come with it? In this stage, we may be forced to explore dynamics we have relied on throughout our lives. People we love and look up to may no longer seem that way after closer inspection. And those relationships may no longer serve us and our current beings. Deciding to create space from loved ones can be one of the hardest decisions in someone's journey to healing. Without blaming or shaming anyone, it is often found that people using substances did not use in a vacuum. Family systems theory sees their problematic use as a potential product of the entire family system. And while family systems can improve as a whole, many, if not most, are deeply resistant to change. And this can come at the detriment to those suffering the most. While I will not advocate for all users to leave their families of origin, I certainly want to make space for anyone brave enough to get curious and learn about healthy boundary setting and learn about what it is in their life that makes them feel good, whole, and safe, and where it is in their life they don't feel that way. People, places, and things, as they say. It could be the saddest part of any healing journey, when staying with the people you love the most isn't what is best for you and your well-being. Now, that may be unique to some users, not others. Everyone's their own journeys and their own stories, but this is the stage in which you start to ask the big questions. So this stage, yeah, it takes forever. I'm still in it. To repeat, these stages are not straightforward. They build on each other and can be continually reassessed. In my own life, I reassess the safety stage all the time. How can I improve on my own safety? I also try to get curious about the things I'm relying on and experiment with alternatives all the time. Like asking myself if I really want to keep watching the Knicks and what else I could be doing with my Sunday beyond stressing over a basketball game. No judgment there. And I may watch, but still. This process, particularly stage 4, can take a lifetime. To truly get to know yourself, it's a journey. There are tons of options in this field that aren't limited to expensive and long-term therapy. Journaling can play a massive role. Spiritual practices, cultivating deep and meaningful relationships, discovering passions, exploring the world. Finding out what makes your life worth living. And in terms of safety versus, the actual living part, I like to think of this quote. A boat is safest in its harbor. But that's not what boats are made for. So yeah, you don't have to take your fishing boat into a Category 5 hurricane. But life isn't safe. There's no way to fully control for that. But we can hopefully find paths to reduce the harm around it. Okay, so that's it. It's that simple. How long did that take? 20 minutes? I guess this whole video might be a little longer. This isn't rocket science, but in a country that still had 80,000 overdose deaths last year, this is so needed. We need clinicians who want to do this. We need courses that teach people how to understand this. And more than that, we need advocates. We need parents who understand, safe spaces for kids and adult users alike to talk about it. And so I'm glad to start the conversation, this podcast episode, and hopefully the coming pamphlet/book on this is certainly not the be-all, end-all. But with every category, with every topic, I hope it starts a vital and life-saving, literally a life-saving conversation. Nobody should have to die, not if they don't want to. Thank you, and have a magically delicious day.